Welcome back. This tutorial is on the remaining details on the engineering hull. If you like these tutorials or find them helpful, then please remember to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell icon to be notified when I post new tutorials. Every time I think that we've modeled everything on the ship, I keep remembering additional details. Like there are some things on the engineering hull that we haven't modeled yet. That includes a rapidly blinking light back by the shuttle bay and a tiny little red light above it. Here's the light in front of the shuttle bay. On the side, of course, they only ever had it on one side. This is a rather low resolution picture from William S. McCullars. Here you can see where the light is located. This was taken after the model was brought to the National Air and Space Museum. The Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. There's no washer around it, but you can see a little bit of that collar here in this photo. Don't worry, I've got better pictures. Here you can see it. Now there's like a collar and a large light in the center. So it's got a ring around it and a light in the center. This is a better shot where you can see the light and the collar. And again, same area, plus you can see this little red one up here. Now, I always thought that that was another Christmas tree light, but the shape that that's in is more like a pill. You can see both here, the pill-shaped red light on top and the larger round light on the side. And that blinks rapidly, about 3 times a second. And you can see the order, the green, flanked by orange, flanked by red, for the shuttle bay landing lights that we did last tutorial. Now, there is a light just in front of this big flashing light, only it's just a window. You can see it a little clearer here. There's the round light, and up top is the pill-shaped red light. The red light is just steady, and it looks like both before and after it, the lights are green, the what look like portholes. A little more washed out, you can still see the pill light. Here's another shot of the pill light, but after this first restoration, it had kind of a collar, and then only a little bit of the red light exposed up top. But I don't think that's how it was during the series. Here's another picture where you can see the collar or the ring with the light in the center. And then in front of it is that porthole, a lit light, like a window. And in Where No Man Has Gone Before, the second pilot, those lights flashed, and the dome light flashed as well. As a matter of fact, it flashed in time with the running lights on the saucer. All right, here's a closer shot for that collar with the light. Here's a much better shot. Now, this was after the second restoration in the 80s, before the current one, where they really overly heavily painted the model. But you can see the pill-shaped red light up top, and you can see the large flashing light with the collar on the bottom. It's got one of these odd markers that go all the way down the hull in back of the big flashing light, and up top is this pill-shaped light, and it looks like that collar is sunk all the way into the hull. So that's the way we're going to model ours, because I think that's more accurate. Closer shot on the flashing light. I'm pretty sure that that's how it appeared during the series. And here it is again. Now, post-modern restoration, they did something a little odd, that they don't have a bulb there for the light. They do have the collar, that like a washer-like device there, and it's lit on the inside, and I think that that's lit with an LED. But I'm fairly certain that during the run of the series that was a large round light bulb. Up top, that's probably an LED too, and it's got green portholes both fore and aft of it. And here you can see again the collar that they left in place, that little brass ring, but only a flashing light in the center, no actual big round light. Another shot here from the Air and Space Museum. Now, this was a shot from Where No Man Has Gone Before, the second pilot. And you can see that there's the 3 lights up top. They actually flashed. There's that marker in the back, but there's no light, and there's no porthole as far as I can see in front of it. The light arrangements, even on the neck and on the rest of the engineering hull, actually did change for the production. And here we are. We're in the production. You can see the lights on the engineering hull, and you can see a dark spot. There's the marker, and then the 3 lights above it that flash during Where No Man Has Gone Before. Normally they're lit during the run of the series, and below it there, that light will flash, and there's also a porthole just in front of it. Here we go. This is a closer shot. You can still see the flashing light, and just in front of it, a little tiny speck that represents the porthole. Here you can see this is a shot during the production run, and if I move it 1 image forward, you can see the light turn on. So it flashes rather rapidly, on and off about 3 times a second. So off, on. This is the same shot used during the immunity syndrome, and you'll notice the light is on. Okay, and if we go forward, okay, so I'm sorry, now it's on. So it was off, and then it's on. And here it is, it's on. This pass is a shot that was originally used in a Balance of Terror. After the title card, Balance of Terror, disappears, then the Enterprise appears as a ship very far off and comes, and apparently comes closer to the camera and sails on by. And this is about as close as you can get and still see any kind of detail, like that's a round light. You actually do see it a couple of frames later, but it goes by as just a white blur. It does turn on and off as it goes by. It was also used as the lead shot for the Doomsday Machine. Here's another shot from Where No Man Has Gone Before. You can tell, number one, there's no light. The 3 blinking lights are there. The rapidly blinking light is missing. The porthole in front of the blinking light is missing. And you can tell that it's Where No Man Has Gone Before because of the impulse engine rocket exhausts that are painted on. And there's no phaser nipple on the planetary sensor array. And there's no detail on the shuttle bay. And the landing strip lights are not lit. The shuttle bay wasn't even detailed, I think, until they wrote an episode for it. And I think the episode was the Galileo 7. Where they show where Spock and a small crew are going to go investigate a quasar, and they get trapped on a planet, but they had to, because they wrote it with a shuttlecraft in mind, they went back and detailed the back of the Enterprise. They got, I think it was AMT, to pay for the building of the shuttlecraft, which was not what Matt Jefferies had designed. He designed a very sleek, aerodynamic-looking, very thin shuttlecraft. AMT agreed to pay for the shuttlecraft as long as they had the rights to sell the model of the thing, but they wanted a different design. They wanted a boxier design that would be easier and cheaper to build. All right, again, from Where No Man Has Gone Before, you can see no light there. There's no phaser nipple on the planetary sensor array. The warp engine domes are hemispheres of wood that have been painted red and affixed to the front. They're very shiny. And the navigational deflector array, the dish in the front of the engineering hall, is at its full size. It's huge. It's actually larger than the cowls in back. And hasn't been cut down yet to the size that it was during the production run. Oh, and there's no washboard on the arms on the engineering hull either, at least as far as I can see. All right, now here we are during the production run of the series, and you can actually see that flashing light there. It's a streak, but then so are the 3 lights above it that are actually portholes, and the porthole that's in front of this thing is also a part of that streak. You can also see a streak where that marking is, but this is because the ship is in movement. The 11-foot model is literally being cranked so that it turns from starboard to port. So it was a guy kneeling down below the ship behind a blue screen, and he would hand crank the ship to turn while the camera was positioned near the ship and pulled back. So they made the model appear to move, but it was the camera that moved all the time. And that's why this is so blurry. This is probably the best shot that you will ever see for the flashing light. This is from the Doomsday Machine. You can actually see the shape of the light, and it's in front of the collar. It's not just a hole in the collar right there. So you've got a round light and a brass collar. You can see the wires that go up and feed the warp engines. You can see some of the markings on the hull. And this is a very grainy, enhanced shot. And you can see that red light that pokes up without an apparent collar around it in the back. And it still looks like that might be pill-shaped. So that's how we're going to model it. And you can even see the dome, the green dome in the back. But the most important part is that round light on a collar. We're going to model that today. You can even see a little bit of it here. There's the collar, there's the light. The light is off. And if we go back one frame, light's back on again. Off, on, off, on, off. And you can see some of the orange, the green flanked by orange, flanked by red for the landing bay. Now here is the Enterprise. This is not actually rendered, but I am in rendered mode, and we're going to model those detail bits now. Okay, I'm going to go to wireframe mode, and we can see the details that Alan has drawn in here. Get rid of my space lights. We don't need them in the way. And you can see where we're going to eventually put the markings. And here's our collar with our light in the center. Going to go to a new layer. I originally thought about creating something that we were going to spin on that center 3D cursor, and to get there, of course, let me turn on my keys so you can see what I'm doing. Cursor to center, make sure that it's right in the middle of our model. But what we're going to do is we're going to go the easier way. We're going to add a cylinder to our model first. So Shift A, add cylinder. We don't need it to be of real high resolution, so I'm going to leave it at 32 verts and faces. Go to the side, press 1 to go to the side, press 7 to see the top, press 1 to see the side. We're going to scale Z and bring it down. That's pretty good. It looks like this. It looks like a fat coin. Now we're going to tab into it. I'm in face select mode. So I'm going to get out of face select mode and go to vertex mode. Good. And then hit B and select the top vertices so that they're highlighted. Now I'm going to make sure that we're in a bounding box center. I don't want 3D cursor, and we'll hit S to scale and bring it in just a little bit. Okay, marvelous. We're not done yet. This is what it looks like at the moment. And we're going to go to 1. And we're going to hit E to extrude in the Z direction. We already have a blue line, so it's going to go up. Bring it up just a little bit, not a whole lot. And then right mouse click to end it, and then we're going to hit S to scale those verts, Z to make it transparent, S to scale. Bring it in a little bit, and that's fine. That's good enough. Now, it's faceted, so we're going to want to make it smooth. Shading, and then we're going to add edge split. Okay, great. So now it's got its shape. It's far too large, so we're going to wind up flipping it and scaling it. So I'm also going to give it a texture. Now I'm going to go through brass and then copper and then antique gold for this. But in the end, I wind up going back to brass. Now I'm going to turn on my space lights and go to rendered mode so you can see what this brass looks like. And actually, when it's small, it looks really, really good. But I'm going to get rid of brass here. I'm going to go to copper. That's too dark. So I'm going to go to antique gold, which is kind of like the brass. But I've also got tiny little lights for my saucer here that I haven't moved. So I'm going to move this now antique gold ring to the first layer. I'm going to grab my lights for my saucer, B, select them all, M to move and hit the first layer. Then we're going to go to the first layer. Marvelous. A to deselect everything, or just right mouse click on our collar. Marvelous. Hit 3 to go to the front view. Rotate R, rotate for negative 90 degrees. And then go back to 1. And first I'm going to align it with the engineering hull. Hit 1, grab it, and align it kind of with Alan's drawing here. Grab and center it up a little bit. G, center it, right mouse click, and then S to scale. We're going to scale it down. We'll zoom in a little closer. And S to scale. All right, it's about the size of the collar, and it's about in the right place. Just grab and kind of center it up. Marvelous. Now, it's really far away from the ship. Go to Z so we can see the thing. We know it's in the right alignment in the Y direction, so G to grab it, Y in the Y direction. Move it closer to the hull. I'm not going to bother with tilting it to match the hull yet because we're not done modeling. But I am going to bring everything in, including the space lights, go to rendered view so we can see what this looks like. That's actually a little too sharp and shiny for me. Like I said, when I'm done, I actually go back to brass. Although, yeah, brass is good. All right, let's go to wired. Now, we're going to want to move the 3D cursor to this selected item. And that puts the 3D cursor right in the middle of the collar, where the origin is. I really don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to tab into it. I've left the central vertices highlighted, Shift S, cursor to selected, and now the cursor is centered in all of those vertices right on the front face of our little collar here. So you can actually see that from the top. It's not at the origin anymore. That's perfect. That's what we want. We're going to hit A to deselect, tab out of it, and then we're going to add our frosted glass for the light. So Shift A and add a UV sphere. Marvelous. Again, we don't need this really detailed, but we do want it smooth, so we're going to go to smooth shading. We're going to go Control 3 to see it from the back. And we're going to rotate 90 degrees. Okay, great. Now we're going to scale it down. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. I deleted some of this. Now the funny thing is, normally I would delete the left half, but instead I'm going to leave not just the center row of verts, but also the first row to the left. And I'm going to hit B, and I'm going to pick everything except those and delete the vertices. Now, this is how I remember the light being shaped, but it's infinitely thin. So we're going to go to modifiers and add a solidify modifier and bump it up to 0.1. Right, that makes it thick enough, but we're also going to have to add edge split because that doesn't look good. Great. Now we're going to reduce it in size because this is ridiculous in comparison. But first, I'm going to go to materials, and start typing F for frosted glass. Oh, nope, there it is. All right, so now it's frosted glass material, and we're going to scale it down. S to scale, and it should be centered pretty much right where we want it. Zoom in, S to scale, and we want to make it the size of the flashing light. So right there, that white area in the center of Alan's drawing. So now it's pretty good. It's inside our collar. Hit Z to see it. All right, and it's fairly nicely positioned. I'm going to go to rendered to see what it looks like. And because it's frosted glass, it's not very bright. Plus that 3D cursor is kind of in the way. It's always visible. So we're going to, move the cursor and zoom in. And let it start to render. So that actually looks pretty good. The only thing is, again, that's actually too dark. So we're going to eventually change that material. We're also going to move this frosted glass to the right by clicking G to grab it, Y in the Y direction, and move it so that the back of the frosted glass meets the front of the plate. So that's nicely positioned. What I should have done was, before we did all of that and before we applied the solidify modifier, we should have created a duplicate of that UV sphere. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to add another UV sphere. Rotate it 90 degrees. And I'm going to delete the same, tab into it, and delete the exact same set of vertices. So leave the center one, leave the first one to the left, grab everything to the left of that, X to delete the vertices, grab the thing, tab out of it, scale it down, and you want to scale it just inside our frosted glass light bulb. Matter of fact, you want to make it just slightly smaller than the solidify modifier. Okay, great. So this is going to be our light source inside the flashing light. So we're going to go to Materials, Add a Material, and I'm going to grab a non-flashing light to begin with that I created for the saucer small lights that don't flash. Matter of fact, I have something called non-flashing light, and we're going to select that for now to start with. You'll see it's just an emission texture of strength 3. So we hit plus, highlight it, and we're going to call it quick flashing light. Because this thing will flash about once every 3 seconds. The strength of 3 is okay, but first I experimented with bumping it down. Go to rendered view to see what it looks like. Scale out a little bit because you never really got a good look at that section of the ship. And it's okay. Again, the 3D cursor is there, so we're gonna move the 3D cursor back to the center out of the way. And that's not bright enough. So I bump it up. I eventually take it to 4 and 5. And I may even go a little higher than that. But 5 looks good. I think I bump it down to 4 now. Yeah. I eventually like it at 5. But looks pretty good. Now here's the thing. Unfortunately, it's just an emission texture. So that would just always stay on. And for renders, that would be fine. But what we're going to do is, in order to be able to animate it, we're going to turn this into a mix texture. So we're going to pick Mix Shader. And the first shader, we're going to pick Emission. And we're going to set that to 4 again. I eventually bump it back up to 5. Now, if you take this all the way to 1, you turn the light off. If you take it all the way down to 0, so 0 for the second shader, then only the emission shader is on. So we're going to go here. We're going to pick Transparent because the light will go from non-existent to bright. So keep that at 1, turns it off, and 0 turns it on. Okay. Set it back to 0 for now. All right. And Z to be able to see everything. Now, what we're going to do is the light inside is already selected. We're going to grab the frosted glass, and we're going to grab the collar. So Shift, right mouse click to select each of those. Now all three are selected. Going to go to a top view. So we're going to make this match the hull now, because if I was to move it back now, you see it does not evenly hit the hull. It's because the hull is curved and tapered. So we go to the top view, 7, zoom in, R to rotate, make sure you're on bounding box center, R to rotate, and make it match the hull. Now that's good, but we're going to go to Control 3 to match it from top to bottom and just rotate a little bit so we can see the angulation of the ship. So R to rotate, make it come close. I changed my angulation a little bit. Hang on one second. Okay. And we're going to better angulate this so we can see it, grab it, and move it so that we just get inside the hull with that collar. All right. We're going to go to a rendered view and see how that looks. And that actually looks pretty good. I'm sorry, I don't let it catch up. It takes a while for that rendered view to actually show up in my screen capture software. But you can see the frosted glass on the outside, the lit light on the inside, the collar, which I eventually make brass instead of this antique gold. It just looks better with the brass texture. All right, so now we're going to select each piece of this, each component of this, and we're going to hit Control A and pick location, rotation, and size, with one exception. We're going to do that for each piece except for the frosted glass. For whatever reason, with the frosted glass, changing the scale always causes it to bounce out like that, which is really weird. So we're going to do location and rotation, and then we'll try scale separately and still get the same result. So we're going to leave it. We're going to Control Z to undo that, and we're just going to leave it. All right. So now that we've done that, we're eventually going to pick all three of these components again. Once I get it through my head that I can't, yeah. All right, good. So now we're just going to leave that, frosted glass. We're going to select all three components. And then we're going to, set the geometry for each one to the 3D cursor. Make sure that the cursor is centered, and then select each one and Control-Alt-Shift-C and tell it to move the origin to the 3D cursor. Select all three components, and then we go to the modifiers. After we zoom out, hit 7 so we can see up top. And I learned that when I add modifier and mirror and get rid of X and pick Y, it only moves one item. It moved the frosted glass. So we're going to pick each item in turn and add the mirror. I move the mirror up. Go in and grab the light. Add a mirror modifier. Deselect X, select Y. And we're almost there. We've just got the collar to do now. Add mirror modifier, deselect X, pick Y, move it up, and now we're done. We've got one on both sides, unlike on the original 11-foot model. The original 11-foot model did not have the port side detailed. All right, all we've got left is the red pill-shaped light up top, so A to deselect, and I'll hit 1, and we're going to center on that top section here. But we're going to add a UV sphere to make that pill shape. So UV sphere. Now, I'm going to do this wrong the first time. I take the segments and I go up to 33, and I don't notice that doesn't increase the center segments. So I'm going to rotate this damn thing 90 degrees. I don't want a line in the center. What I want is a row of faces in the center. So I'll show you how to do that correctly in just a moment. So I move this and I go to all the trouble of scaling it before I realize my mistake. So scale it down, really tiny. I check by going to 7 and making sure that it's centered up where I want it. And then I notice there's no center strip of faces. So we're going to do this all over again. We're going to delete the UV sphere. X, delete. Shift A, add UV sphere. And here's where I made my mistake. I'm going to take segments back down to 32. I went up to 34. What a dope. Take it down to 32. And we're going to increase rings, which is what I want, to 17. Now we have a strip of faces down the center. And that's the important part of making a pill-shaped something. So R to rotate, type 90 for 90 degrees. Grab the thing, center it up in the back, scale it down, zoom in. Whoops. Hit 1, recenter. Grab that, center it on that red light. Scale it down till it's smaller than the light. And position it so it's about in the right spot. Hit 7. Grab in the X direction. So G to grab, X in the X direction. Oh, I'm sorry. Nope. Highlight. Go down the center strip of faces and highlight all the vertices in the front. And then G to grab, X to move it forward. Grab the back vertices, G to grab, X to move backwards. And now you've got your pill shape, but it's round on the bottom. So we're going to tab into it. And we're going to grab everything below the center line. So B to select. We want to leave the center line, but delete everything below it. So B, select everything below. X to delete the verts. And I have left 4 of them. 2 in back, so go and select those 2. Whoops. There we go. And delete X verts. And do the same in the front. X verts. Now, we're going to select 1 vertex on the bottom line. Alt, right mouse click on one adjoining to it. It will select all the vertices on the bottom. E to extrude. Z in the Z direction, up and down direction. And just move your cursor down till it goes inside the hull a little bit. Right mouse click and A to deselect. We are definitely inside the hull, but we are segmented, so we are going to tell it to smoothly shade it. Don't need an edge split, but we do need a material. So we're going to go to material, and we're going to find red glass. You just type red. There we go, red glass. Pick that. That looks good, but we're going to need a light in the center. So I think I'm going to add a solidify modifier. It's a strange shape for a light. Shift D to duplicate it. S to scale it down. Move it down a little bit. Now that's going to serve as our actual light. The top one still needs the solidify modifier, however. So we're going to add a solidify modifier. Great. Make it 0.1. All right. Marvelous. Now we go in and we grab the light. We're going to delete the red glass material. So hit the minus sign. And we're going to give it the non-flashing light. Okay, great. So now let's go to a rendered view and see what that looks like. The non-flashing light I have being used on top of the warp engines, those 2 tiny lights, and also there are 4 non-flashing lights on the saucer. So let's go to rendered view, back out a little bit. We have a small, almost unnoticeable red light up top, and the flashing light on the sides. And the only thing that I have left to change is, I have reason to suspect, based on looking at some of the screen captures I've got from the series, that the two round portholes, both fore and aft of the red light that we just made, are actually green. They're not white. And I originally made one in orange and one in green just because it appealed to me. But what we're going to do is, in a moment, we're going to zoom in, take a look at that, and we're going to change it to like the sensor dish green light. This is actually looking pretty good. And you'll notice that the small red light is so small, you almost don't even notice it's there. And even the flashing light, you wouldn't notice it. All you'll notice is that it'll turn on and off. So I hit 5 to get out of the orthographic view, scale in, zoom in, I mean, and I've got my orange and my green light. So I'm going to change that orange to another green light by hitting Z. Now it's transparent. I'm going to zoom in, hit 5 to go back to orthographic. And I've got a little square there that's my light source. We'll click that. I'll delete the orange. And we'll add a green light. Just type green glass or green. And there's a green room light. Green sensor light, I mean. It's the same as up front. Oh, I picked green sensor light too. So we'll get rid of that. And we'll make a green sensor light. That's the one I want. Whoops. Green. It's a green sensor light. Okay, great. So zoom out. 5 to get out of orthographic mode, and then go to rendered. And that looks pretty good. That's starting to look kind of like some of the Chris Trice documentation photos. That looks really nice. And we've got our flashing light. And like I said, the collar I eventually made brass anyway, so it doesn't stand out quite so much. We have the flashing light on both sides so that we can render from both sides. And eventually we'll get to animating those lights. Anyway, I think this looks pretty good. If you go to kind of an imitation of what we saw for the beginning of Balance of Terror or the Doomsday Machine, just like on the real thing, just like on film, that light is almost unnoticeable. It's in the right place. If we go by, it'll be, if we film it as the Enterprise goes by, it'll just be a smear, but we know that that light is there, it's got the appropriate collar, and it's on both sides of our ship. We can render from both sides. It's looking pretty good. All right, don't forget to save your progress. File save. And I think next time we have to start doing texturing. All right. So keep up the good work. Thank you for sticking with it so far. And I will see you next tutorial.